Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to a very special episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast on the eve of the 2024 Masters. My name is Michael Wein. Wednesday, April 10th, 10 p.m. Central Time, live from Houston, Texas. Welcome in. If you're listening live, engage with us in the chat and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. Share it with your friends who are going to be watching the Masters, whether or not they are really into golf like we are, or they're just more casual fans, but they tune into the Masters every year. Super special event. It's going to be a very special episode. And so thank you guys for tuning in. We will be posting our player pool draft picks, which will be the second half of this show, on our social media directly after the conclusion of this episode, so that we are on the record with our picks. It'll work similar to how it has the past couple of years when we enter major season. So I just want everyone to know that, and we will go from there. We will explain that more when we get to that. That'll be the second half of the show. We also are going to answer some burning questions that Emmy and I talked about in our pre-show development. We'll get to that in a second, but I wanted to start with something I thought would be appropriate given the circumstances here at the 2024 Masters. But before I do that, let me welcome in my fellow friend, my co-host, and a big golfer himself, absolutely loves the Masters, Mr. Emmy Nixon. What's up?
Nothing much, man. I am so excited for this year's Masters, as you mentioned. I mean, this is it's the biggest golf tournament every single year. It's by far my favorite major to watch every single year. I just think this course is so unique. It makes these players have to, be creative and just have a higher level of shot making than other courses force them to do. So it's a special week every year.
Absolutely. It's the first and the most prestigious major that we have in the world of golf. But before we get into all of that, I'm going to start with something that I thought would be appropriate. And we'll start with a couple clips that I pulled for tonight's show. Now, these clips are from broadcasts, but they're all over social media. So I just want people to know, if you're out there, YouTube, we're not trying to infringe on any copyright here. We're just running our show here.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense, like, we're using this, but we're using it for a purpose, and people are using it everywhere. So I assume. So let me just play these clips real fast. There will be a short exchange in between as I have to reshare my screen, and then I'll explain why I'm playing the clips. Okay. Let's get into this. All right. Here we go.
And this is extremely difficult. This is one of the toughest pitches on the entire place here. He's got to put this well that you can see him looking up the slope.
I'm reminded of Davis Love here 4 or 5 years ago when he pitched in. Well, here it comes. Oh, my goodness. In your life have you seen anything like that?
Okay. That's clip 1. Now let me play clip 2, and then I'll get into explaining why I'm playing these. And then we'll move forward with the show. Okay. And you could hear that okay, right, Emmy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear it.
Perfect. All right, I know this one is not golf, but I'm going to play it anyways. You'll see why I'm playing it again after I play it.
Now they've officially made it 57 yards.
Oh, I know what. Okay.
Go the other way. Tim's got to be careful. Get it up. On the way. No, returned by Chris Davis. Davis goes left. Davis gets a block. Davis has a good block. Chris Davis. No flags. Touchdown. Auburn. An answered prayer.
So, the reason I play those two clips, as Emmy now probably knows, is Vern Lundquist. This is his 40th and final Masters that he will be on the call for. And everyone kind of knows Vern Lundquist for him being in the tower on 16 at Augusta on Sundays. People know him. People older than us know him for his calls on some of the most famous Super Bowls of all time. A lot of people know him for his years working with Gary Danielson on CBS, working SEC games, just like the absolute historic one and historic moment we just saw. People also know him for his ability to call the Final Four, as he used to do so well. One of the best to ever do it. He's wrapping up his long, super successful career, and he'll leave a big void at Augusta for sure. Jim Nantz is awesome. We're lucky to have a guy like Jim Nantz to kind of take us home on the weekends on CBS, Saturday and Sunday broadcasts. He does it fantastically, and he's been doing it for a long time. But Vern Lundquist, just like he'll be missed in college football for those SEC games on CBS, which won't actually be any longer because now the Big Ten is taking over CBS. His calls on the Final Four, Super Bowls, and of course at Augusta, he will be missed. Do you have any further comments on Vern Lundquist, who's calling his 40th and final Masters this week?
Well, I mean, I'm right there with you, and you hit the nail on the head. He's one of the best to ever do it, 100%. And his voice is just iconic. Also, just there's so many different calls that I look towards, like just as being like a huge part of my childhood. Just like him calling some of Tim Tebow's best moments. I was a big Tim Tebow guy at that point when I was a little kid. Obviously, all those SEC games. I mean, there's so many different moments you can't even count. I mean, it's definitely going to be a big void. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's like, ever since Nick Faldo retired, it's felt like a lot of golf broadcasts haven't felt the same. And now losing Vern for the Masters, that's going to be a big loss as well.
Absolutely. So I thought we'd pay our respects to a legend in the broadcasting field.
Yeah.
One of the best to ever call sports. So with that being said, let's get into our Mega 2024 Masters preview. And we will start with the burning questions that we're going to bring to the table here for the first 20 minutes of the show. And I wanted to start, I thought it would be appropriate to start our show today by asking this question. The number one player in the world right now is Scottie Scheffler, and it's not particularly arguable right now. For Scottie Scheffler to win his second green jacket, though, Emmy, as we know, putting has kind of been up and down lately for Scottie Scheffler. It's been much better as of late as he's won a couple of events. And he's in really good form coming into Augusta. But for him to win this week, you think his putting needs to rank blank in strokes gained putting? You think he needs to rank where in strokes gained putting to get his second green jacket?
With how good his ball striking is, I think anywhere in the top 20 in strokes gained putting would probably do it. And I think it's more about, to me, it's more about just making the timely putts that are needed. Like, there's going to be moments in time where you're going to need a par save on a 12-footer. Those types of putts are going to be the big ones. I think, to put it simply, Saturday and Sunday, obviously, like every single champion, they've had like big putts made. But I think for Scottie, though, it's more so just as long as he's somewhere in the mix come Saturday and Sunday, that's where if the putter gets hot, he's going to be damn near impossible to beat.
Yeah, I think with how good his ball striking is, as he's one of the best ball strikers I think we've seen over the last 20 years in the game of golf.
It's hard for me to say.
Maybe
ever.
even longer
I'm
than
gonna
that.
hold off on that, but it's. I mean, the numbers he's putting up. I mean, the statistics. Like over this like year and a half span, it's probably been some of the best ball striking ever.
Yeah, he's one of the great ball strikers in the last 20 years. He's perhaps, in my opinion, the most disciplined golfer in the world, which leads to a ton of success at majors. As we know, since he started regularly playing majors as a pro at the 2020 PGA, he has the second most top tens of anybody at majors, second to only Rory McIlroy. Scheffler has 9, McIlroy has 10.
Wow.
So he's been really good in these events. I think his ball striking and his tee to green game is so good and has been so good and so consistent for so long, even in the events that he doesn't necessarily play all that great. His ball striking and his tee to green game usually keep him somewhere near the top of the leaderboard. And so I think as long as he makes timely putts and is within the top 15, top 20 in strokes gained putting, he'll have a very solid chance to win on Sunday. That's really all that needs to be said on that question. Okay. 2 legends are playing at Augusta this week. Phil Mickelson, who's been with Liv, and of course Tiger, who the last time we saw him was at the Genesis in February. Some people thought he was going to play the Players, ended up not. He said that his body wasn't ready enough to play at TPC Sawgrass, and so he skipped out on that. But he feels like, he said this, he feels like he could probably play once a month if he really pushed himself. And the reports are that he looks really good in practice rounds. And he said, because he's Tiger Woods, that he still thinks he can get another major. Who's going to play better this week in your eyes? Phil or Tiger?
Well,
and there's a lot that goes into that question, because part of it is Tiger going to make it through, 36 holes? Because the last time we saw him, he didn't. Right. And then nobody really knows kind of what form Phil Mickelson is in right now, unless you go read about, what he's been doing at Liv. But it seems like every time he gets to Augusta, he tends to play some pretty good golf.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Spieth in a way, to where it really doesn't matter what his form is. He just seems to find ways to play well at Augusta. Maybe not well enough to win or contend, but he's not.
Like he's
It
consistently
never seems like to
top
me.
30.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah. So given that, go ahead and I guess give what you think.
Well, I think rust is a big factor for Tiger for sure. Because as much as I would like for him to play well, and as much as I want to believe, like, oh, he's been looking great in practice rounds, tournament golf is it's a different beast, especially in a major. So I think within Tiger's first 5 to 7 holes of his first round, we'll know where he's actually at. Like if he comes out and hangs around even par, then I'm pretty confident that he'll end up higher on the leaderboard than Phil come the end of the week. But if he comes out and struggles early, I just don't know if at this point in his career he'll catch fire enough to pull himself out of a hole and make a cut. So
I think both can play well. But if I had to make a bet on who I think will finish better, who I think will end up higher on the leaderboard, I'd probably lean Phil.
yeah,
He hasn't been great across the board. Like if you look at his numbers on the Live Tour, they're not great. They're not numbers that you would necessarily think just on paper would translate to having a good week at Augusta. But let me take you back to last year. Just last year, Mickelson did nothing before the Masters, nothing after the Masters. And in the middle of all that, just randomly out of nowhere, he shot 65 on Sunday and finished tied second. So I just think he kind of has that ability to he knows the course really well. Not that Tiger doesn't, but he gets on this golf course and something clicks for him. I don't know how well he's going to play. There's supposed to be some inclement weather tomorrow morning. They haven't pushed start times back yet, but they might. But I do think Phil, if I had to make a bet, will play better than Tiger for those reasons. But I'm rooting for Tiger, definitely. Okay. So a couple more questions here. There are some really intriguing rookies at this year's Masters. Players making their debut at Augusta. And we haven't had a rookie win at Augusta since Keegan Bradley in 2011. So, with that being said,
Charles Schwartzel? I don't think
Uh,
Keegan won a Master. I think he won the PGA that year, actually.
maybe. Anyways, who is your most intriguing rookie at this year's Masters? We've got Ludwig Aberg. We've got Wyndham Clark making his first appearance. A bunch of other names. Who's the most intriguing to you? Not necessarily the guy who you think could play the best, but most intriguing.
Most intriguing. I think Ludwig Aberg is the easy choice. I mean, he's risen all the way up to top 10 in the world, and he's just been so consistent. The ball striking, the short game prowess. I mean, it's all there. I think the thing that I would probably be concerned a little bit about is with all of the power that he has in the tank, like on some of these tee shots where you just got to kind of play for positioning, if he might get a little bit over aggressive and get himself into trouble. But I think he has as good a chance as anybody, even if he is a rookie. I think he just has that much talent to where he can make up for it.
Yeah. I think so too. But for the sake of this podcast and this conversation, I'll go Wyndham Clark. Not that I disagree with you. You're right, by the way. The last rookie actually to win the Masters was Fuzzy Zeller back in 1979. Not sure where I saw. I'll have to double check on the stat that I saw earlier. But anyways, Wyndham Clark really isn't any just ordinary rookie coming into this year's Masters for a couple reasons. You can make the argument that he would be the hottest player on tour right now if it wasn't for Scotty Scheffler existing. He's got runner-up finishes at both the Arnold Palmer and the Players' Championship to go with his win at Pebble Beach, where he shot a 60 to win it on a Saturday. And, he's just like, I can't remember a rookie that has had this much success within the last year going in. But
Yeah.
I think both those guys are intriguing just because Wyndham Clark has kind of mentioned, or he mentioned at the Houston Open, that he's dealing with some kind of like nagging back injury. So we'll have to see how that plays out coming into this week. And then Ludwig, he's never played in a major championship before. But I think his skill set couldn't fit Augusta National better. And he's been excellent at some of the more big boy events this year. 8th at the Players, 2nd at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, 9th at Farmers Insurance. Like, those are the bigger events that we've had so far this year.
The elite
and he's
fields,
played his best golf.
the select fields.
Yeah, he's played his best. He's played his best golf at those times. So I think both those guys are very, very intriguing, and I'll be watching to see which one of those guys plays better this week. But we can talk more about that when we get to our draft. A couple more questions here. Who, in your opinion, is going to win the low amateur? You have a pick for that?
I think. Let's see. My pick for low am. I think I'm gonna go with actually Stuart Hagstad. He's played in the Masters a few times as an amateur. His story is interesting because he's not like one of these like teenage amateurs where he's just like he got in through USAM as like a college player. He's in his late 20s, but he just chose not to go pro. I think he's actually a firefighter. He just has insane amount of game. I remember he actually contended in the first 2 rounds at the U.S. Open a few years ago. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah. He was the 2023 mid-amateur winner, has played many rounds at Augusta. So, there's Christo Lamprecht, I believe is how you say his name. I think he's an amateur.
Yeah.
And then there's
South African, I think.
Yeah, and then there's the guy who just played well last week, Bhatia, right?
I think Bhatia is a pro actually. I think he is on tour. I think Santiago de Fuente I think is amateur as well.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. It's a very inexact science to try to predict which amateur is going to play the best. But just for the sake of the podcast, I'll go with
probably just go with Santiago just because his name is superior. Honestly, his name is cool.
Yeah, I'll go with Santiago. He joined Alvaro Ortiz back in 2019, the year that Tiger won it. as Mexicans who have won the Latin America Amateur Championship to get a spot in the Masters. His story is wild. He started his career at Arkansas Tech, where the men's athletic teams are called the Wonder Boys. Before he landed, at Houston, where he became an All-American. So he's gone from the Wonder Boys to Magnolia Lane. And those are just kind of the wild stories that you get out of this event every single year. Okay, and then finally, just your overall thoughts on the state of professional golf. And you can take that question wherever you would like.
Well, the big thing hanging over everyone's head right now is like we're still waiting on what this PGA Live merger is actually going to be. We still have no clue what that actually is going to look like. My thinking is like my prediction would probably be just the Live Golf Series is going to like continue to like be its own thing. It's going to be its own set of events. And the PGA Tour is still going to have its own set of events as well. But I think what's going to happen is probably, I think more top players are going to end up on the Live Golf Tour. It'll probably be closer to maybe like 80 or 90 players, I think, and probably still keeping the team format and all that type of stuff. I think if that were to happen, I think that would be a win-win for golf, because I think the more top players you can get over there and doing this team format, because I actually think the team format is actually, I think it's pretty cool. It's weird right now because I think players are still adjusting to it, and some players, from what I've heard, some players care about it, and some players don't really give a crap about it. But I think with the more time that goes on, I think it's going to gain more and more credibility, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of visceral frustration that many are feeling with the sport of golf these days, from the fans to the players to media members who cover the sport on a daily basis. And, they've been raising the same questions for months now. Those questions like, what the hell is even going on right now? Are the Live and the PGA ever going to merge? They've been working on it, trying to work stuff out, but nothing's really come together yet. And is there a right or a wrong side at this point? Or kind of have morals and ethics been rendered irrelevant by the money that is being put out there by the Live Tour? There are a ton of questions that we're not here to answer right now, but it's just kind of that uncertainty. I think everything in the sport of golf over the past 2.5 years has shouldered kind of this like existential weight that nobody has yet been able to shed, just because there are so many questions yet to be answered. So I think for the most part, people, who have golf stakeholders, if you will, have taken fans' attention kind of for granted, assuming it would always be there because it kind of always has been. But there's a lot to this, and some would tell you out there, and I don't know if I'm one of these people because I don't know that I've thought about it enough, but some don't necessarily like the fact that such is the state of professional golf leading into what is golf's most prestigious event, golf's most prestigious week. And there are people out there, kind of this big gray cloud over this event, where people are engaged in arguments about laws and morality and ethics and politics and all of this stuff. So there's all of that exists up here. But for the sake of this episode, we need to get to our player draft. But we will be addressing this more in depth on another episode in the future, whether that be a Patreon podcast or just another golf episode. Remember, we do an episode like this for every major. So not everything feels as big as maybe the Masters, but they're still the majors, and we only get 4 of them every year. So we're going to be here covering that, and this is the start of that. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen for the tiers that we will be using for, I don't know what number draft this is for us, what year this is that we're doing.
I think this is year 3 of us.
A draft.
I think
it's probably year 3 of this particular format. So Emmy will pull that up. And while he does that, I will explain how this is going to work. So there are 5 tiers of players sorted by the odds. And each of us are going to go back and forth, and we're going to pick one player initially from each tier. Once we go tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, and we each have picked a player from each tier, we will circle back around, and we each get one wild card pick. And that wild card pick can come from any of the tiers that we choose. It just can't be a player that's already been picked, of course. So that's how the draft is going to work. And now Emmy can kind of explain how the competition, how the scoring works for this.
so. The scoring is going to. First of all, can you can see it, right?
I can see the restream screen. I can't see the odds.
Okay. Let me.
But
okay. So the scoring is going to be.
There we go.
So we're going to have our teams of 6 players, 5 players, and a wild card pick, and it's going to be combined total score. And if you have a player that misses the cut, you're going to get a 5-stroke penalty for that player. So that if you have a player that does make the cut, but then kind of falls back on Saturday and Sunday, it kind of evens out in that way. So 5-stroke penalty for missing the cut. And then the goal is just to have the lowest score possible, and lowest score between me and Michael at the end of the week wins.
So something we haven't discussed is who gets first pick. So since you were better at this last year than I was, I'll let you have first pick.
Generous. Appreciate that.
But first.
Yeah, that's fair, definitely. Okay. And you can have the first pick for the next major as well. So it'll even out over the course of the year. So for my pick, pretty easy. I'm going with Scotty Scheffler. I mean, I think the format he's in, I would just feel stupid to not pick him at this. Like I just think it's just whether he wins or not, I feel extremely confident that he'll be somewhere in contention come Sunday.
Good pick. The best player on the planet. And, right now, the way that he's playing, I don't think that the question of would you take Scotty Scheffler or the field if Scotty Scheffler is on his game, I don't think that's such a crazy question anymore. He's just, there are eye-popping statistics, but he's number 1 in approach play at the Masters over the last 3 years, if you look at the numbers, by a wide margin. And so, his lead in that category is equivalent to a full stroke per tournament over the next best guy. and the most important statistic when it comes to winning the tournament, approach play. So that's a huge deal. And you have a really good chance, I think, by just picking Scotty to have predicted the winner of this major, just because I think you did that maybe once or twice last year, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly,
Yeah,
but
I think within my tiers on I think 3 of the 4 majors I had the winner, and then the other major you had it. So
yeah,
it was a clean sweep.
can you scroll back up to tier 1 real
Oh, right,
fast?
sorry.
Okay, so Scotty Scheffler's off the board. And I had to know once I gave you the first pick that would be definitely possible that he would go off. So I think legitimately you could make an argument for any of these guys in tier 1 to win this week. Now, some might be more likely than others, and you might not agree with all the arguments that you would make for each of these players, but you can make the argument. I think I'm down to probably 2 or 3 of these guys. Jon Rahm, who of course won it last year, and you could say he's probably the second best player on the planet when he's at his best. Xander Schauffele, who I would argue, even though he hasn't necessarily had the wins yet, has been the second best player on tour, second or third best player on tour so far this year. And then Brooks Koepka, another live guy whose Masters results are kind of feast or famine, if we're being honest. He's got 3 top 7s in the last 5 years, but the other 2 years in that span, he's missed the cut. So it's been kind of, he's either in it to win it or he's not. He's not even in the weekend. But I think I'm going to go with Xander Schauffele. I've had faith in Xander Schauffele for a while now. And it's yet to really pay huge dividends in these kind of drafts, but he's 18-1. And the way that he's been playing, statistically, you could definitely argue he's been the second best player in the world so far this year. He's also had success in the majors. He's got 3 top 10s and 4 top 20s in his last 5 starts at Augusta. So he's had success at this event. He just hasn't necessarily broken through yet. And he could be one of those guys, if we get to Sunday evening and there's a first-time major winner and a first-time green jacket winner, he would be at the top of my list for guys who could possibly donning that green jacket come Sunday evening. I think he's almost certainly, though, even if he doesn't win the event, going to be in the mix come the weekend. So I think he'll put up a good score. He's played well at this event now pretty consistently for the past half decade, pretty much. And what he's done this year so far in the calendar year 2024 has been very impressive. He's in good form. Wouldn't pick him to win the tournament necessarily, but because you can kind of say what you want about his quote unquote ability to close tournaments, but
Yeah.
I think he'll be right in the mix. Like I think he'll post a good number.
Yeah, I think in terms of value, like making sure you have a guy that in your tier 1 that is going to be there on Sunday within the top 10. I think that's about as sure of a thing as you can get out of these guys. Maybe outside of maybe like Jon Rahm, but even then, he's been a little bit on and off this year with Liv as well. So for tier 2, you go again because it's snake draft. So you get the first pick of tier 2.
Oh goodness. Okay. So this tier is very, very interesting. You've got a lot of guys here that have had some success at Augusta. And you've got guys who, I think about Dustin Johnson, who's already won a green jacket. I think about Tony Finau, who's had good weeks at Augusta before, just hasn't won the damn thing yet. You think about, Patrick Cantlay, a guy who's been in contention a while now, still hasn't won. And then you have guys who there are questions to be had. Can Cam Smith break through? He's been a guy that we've talked about a lot, but is now with Liv. Justin Thomas, his form has just been kind of up and down, but it's improved as of late.
Yeah.
Matt Fitzpatrick, who's a major winner and has played well in these kinds of events. Bryson DeChambeau, kind of that wild card that everyone kind of forgets about, but when these tournaments come about, everyone kind of remembers, like, oh, there's that guy. 40-1. And then Max Homa, who's like, I think of any player in this field, you can make the argument that like he's really intriguing in how he's going to perform at majors this year. Can he break through? Because he hasn't necessarily had the best track record yet at these kinds of events. But in terms of who I'm going to pick here, let me see. Let me look at my big board here. So I think, I've gone with Patrick Cantlay in the past. He's 35-1. And I think that's certainly an argument to be made for that. You know what? I'm going to go Will Zalatoris. That might surprise some people. But his major finishes are staggering. In 9 starts as a professional at majors, he's got 3 second-place finishes and 3 more top 10s to go along with that. The other 3 were a withdraw, a miscut, and a tied for 28th. So in 7 of the 9, he's been in the top 30. And, we'll see, but I like the way, his game, the form that he's in right now. I certainly think he has the talent to do it. And it's difficult to find, 2 bigger overperformers at majors compared to their regular play than maybe like Brooks Koepka and Will Zalatoris. There are other names you could throw in that mix, absolutely. But at 35-1, I like his chances. It was just like, I think it was 3 years ago that he finished runner-up at this event. So I think he'll play well this week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pick, actually. I mean, he missed the entirety of last season with that wrist injury, and he's had good showings here as of late. He's showing that he's getting back into form, and he's kind of gotten the rust off here a little bit as well. So, I mean, Augusta is a shot maker's course. So, with his swing and his ball striking ability, I mean, he's as consistent as it gets. Like on tour, he's probably on a short list of guys who you put like a 7-iron in their hand. He's probably on a short list of guys I would want in that scenario. Like he's just lethal with just about every iron in the bag. So, for my pick, I think there's a layer of just like risk reward here with some of these guys. Like I just think like Bryson is so hit or miss in majors. Like, but if he is on his game, then he could be so dangerous with all the power that he has. Victor Hovland has taken a step back this year. That thus far, he's fallen in the world rankings quite a bit, or not that much. Only I think he's fallen from 2 to 6, but he has been in a little bit of a slump by his standards for sure. And then the other guy I would look at is probably Max Homa, and that's also a bit of risk because, as you mentioned, he hasn't performed all that great in majors. So I think I'm going to go with Bryson. I have a weird feeling. I could get burned by this, but I think the risk is worth the reward.
I mean, technically, you can get burned by any pick, right? Even if you don't think
true.
you can.
But I just think with how squirrely he can get with the driver at times, and then it's just all about whether or not his putter is on as well, because his putter can be a little bit hit or miss sometimes as well.
Okay. I like it. Can't really argue with it. Let's move on to tier 3, and you're up first.
All right, tier 3. I feel like I pick this guy every single time, but I don't know. I feel really good about this guy just about every single major, and that's Tommy Fleetwood. I think his game is. I think his game suits Augusta. I really do believe that, and I think also he has the ability to just catch fire as well. Like, there's not a lot of guys that can go as low as Tommy Fleetwood on any given day. Like, I think a few years ago, I think he has the 2 lowest rounds in U.S. Open history with 263s in the span of like 5 years, which just proves my point. He's a microwave. Like, if there's a version of like a microwave scorer in golf, like that's Tommy Fleetwood. Like, he can fill it up when he catches it. So I feel pretty good about that. I think he's been in good form. I think he had a top 5 here recently where he nearly broke through and got his first win on the PGA Tour. But I don't think I would choose him to win. I think it's similar to kind of your pick with Xander Schauffele in that sense. But I do think he'll be somewhere in the top 20.
I like it. Couple guys I'm looking at in tier 3. Shane Lowry. His track record kind of speaks for itself at Augusta. Here are the golfers with the most top 25s in the last 4 Masters. It's Scotty Scheffler, Hideki Matsuyama, and Shane Lowry. Those are the only guys that have finished top 25 in each of the last 4 Masters. And then you have John Rahm and 8 others that have 3 top 25 finishes in the last 4 Masters. So he's obviously played well and been in contention here. Scroll back up. I need to see the names.
Sorry.
Tommy Fleetwood was a guy I was considering, but you took him. Sahith Theegala. Here's what I'll say about Theegala is he's really interesting. He finished 9th last year at this tournament. And, you know, if Zalatoris is kind of that new Koepka, maybe not necessarily in the amount of wins that he's going to accrue at majors and the success that he might have, like, I don't know if that'll equal up to Koepka, but he's a guy who kind of, as I explained when I made that pick, has kind of overperformed at majors relative to his performance at kind of other events.
Right.
Theegala might be the new Spieth. He's good, but a little wild off the tee when I watch him. He's a terrific iron player and at times can be and have an elite short game. It's kind of a lot of similarities to Jordan Spieth in a way. He's an electric factory when he's on. He's impossible to take your eyes off. And if he plays like he did at the end of last year's Masters when he shot a 67 on Sunday, he could definitely post a pretty good score here. He's probably the most electrifying, one of the more electrifying players in this tier. It's funny that just nobody really talks about Colin Morikawa. That guy just kind of goes about his business.
Yeah.
I think I'm between Theegala, Russell Henley, who actually, if you look at it, has better numbers at Augusta over the last 10 years than guys like Tony Finau, Cameron Smith, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland, Xander Schauffele, a guy I picked in tier 1. He's, I believe, top 20 in the official World Golf ranking. Is that right? Yeah, he's number 17.
Top 17. Yeah, he's flew up the rankings this year.
He finished top 5 at Augusta last year. He's finished top 15 in 3 of the last 4 Masters. He finished top 5 at Bay Hill. He's top 30 in strokes gained putting. He's top 5 in 3 putt avoidance, and he's top 15 or he was top 15 in the FedEx Cup last year. So screw it. I'm going Russell Henley.
Yeah, I think that's a really good pick. I actually I read an article on the Athletic where their writers made their picks, and one of their picks was Russell Henley, kind of as a dark horse pick. I think with how he's been playing, I mean, there's definitely a chance that he breaks through at this tournament. Definitely, he definitely, as you said, he likes this course a lot. He plays really well here, so I like that pick a lot. This tier was, I think, very interesting. I think a lot of players that I kind of view as being, I guess, similar in I guess how I view them like overall.
Yeah,
Okay, tier 4 now.
I'm
Your
up.
pick up again. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
This is this is an interesting tier here. So here's what I'll say. Corey Connors is a guy that I'm looking at. He's probably not going to win like a lot of these guys. I mean, only one guy wins this event, not to be Captain Obvious. But nobody has more top tens than Corey Connors does at the Masters since the start of 2020. He's tied with John Rahm, Cameron Smith, I believe, and Patrick Reed. So he's played really well here, and he was tied 6th back in 2022. He's a guy I look at just playing some solid golf. He's in the top 50 in the world golf rankings. Minwoo Lee at the top of this tier is a guy that I've taken a chance on in the past. I think last year I took a chance on him. He did get top 15 at Augusta 2 years ago, but his big problem is he's a bad iron player. He's not a great iron player, especially from like that 150 to 200 yard range. And so that's a tough distance to not necessarily be a weakness in order to kind of play really well at Augusta, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But if he were to get hot, I mean, I think that's part of the reason he's at the top of tier 4. Like, if he plays well, he could get hot and he could definitely like put his name in the mix and post a good number.
definitely. Yeah.
Who else is in this tier? Adam Scott, the guy who's won it before, twice actually. Akshay Bhatia.
No, just once. Yeah, just once.
Just once?
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking of Bubba Watson. Ricky Fowler, yeah. Denny McCarthy, Tom Kim, Sanjay M. I mean, Patrick Reed's won it before. He's interesting, but very polarizing. I'm going to go Corey Connors. I just view him as kind of like, when I look at this list, just initially, I view him as kind of like a safer pick.
Yeah, he's. I would probably say he's probably the best iron player on this list, right there with Sanjay M. Sanjay M is probably the guy I would be looking at as the two, I guess, safe picks on this tier 4. Corey Connors and him, definitely. But I'm actually going to go with a guy that I think is one of the best putters in the world currently, and that's Denny McCarthy. Last week, I think he was 6 shots back headed into the back 9 and then proceeded to make 4 straight birdies to be tied heading onto the 17th tee, or be one back heading onto the 17th tee. He ended up coming up short and getting a second, but I think that performance said a lot about, I guess, his mental makeup and how his game is right now. I think with how well he putts and how tough Augusta's greens are, he's going to gain a lot of shots on the field just from playing his game.
Yeah, he's a good pick. He's played in 9 majors, including 4 PGA championships, never played the Masters. So we'll see how he does. But definitely could happen. I wanted to make one more kind of comment on the guy at the bottom of tier 4, and that's Tom Kim, who's currently top 25 in the official World Golf rankings, and he's 110-1 in the odds. You know, I'm actually pleasantly surprised when I look at his results last year at the major championships. Tied 16th, at the Masters last year. Tied 8th at the U.S. Open and tied 2nd at the Open Championship. It's not necessarily what I expected, because when you think of Tom Kim, at least when I think of him, I don't think of him as kind of having the modern skill set you think of when you think of major winners nowadays. But he does kind of have an impressive amalgamation of like this magnetic presence, grit, sense of the moment.
Yeah.
That's kind of difficult to quantify in a way. And I think if I were to kind of, go back and maybe make a wild card pick from this tier, which I probably won't do, but he'd be an interesting guy to kind of, I think, given what I've seen, given the data, I'll keep an eye on Tom Kim. Like, he won't be totally out of sight, out of mind this week, if he's on the leaderboard early on. Let's move on to tier 5 though. And I believe you got first pick here, so go ahead and make your selection.
For my pick, this is where it's kind of just randomness. But I think I'm gonna go with Harris English. He's been playing pretty solid this year. He was a guy that I think was on tour and then lost his tour card, and now he's gotten it back. And I think his game, like, he's not the best ball striker, but I think he's a solid enough ball striker. He's a good putter. I think out of the guys on this tier, I think he's been pretty consistent throughout this season as well. So out of the guys on this list, he's someone I would definitely feel good about.
Yeah, he's struggled through a couple years of injuries, but he's playing solid golf again, and he's had success at major championships. His best one so far has been the U.S. Open, where he's got 3 top 8 finishes in his last 4 appearances. But certainly, I mean, we're in tier 5, so what we're really talking about here is take a flyer on a guy and see if it pays off, in my opinion. So
just looking for a guy that's going to make the cut and maybe be under par.
Exactly. And if you can get that, then you're having a good week. It's funny. I look at this list and I see Sergio's name, and he's with Liv now. But when you look at kind of his track record here in the last 10 years, he's got a win. He's got 5 missed cuts, but he's also got 2 top 10s. So it's kind of been, in a way,
a little bit all over the place.
Yeah. A little feast of famine.
He has been in decent form on Liv. That's definitely worth noting.
Yeah, he has. He's in consideration. Like, he has a track record of success before here. He gains 0.66 strokes per round on the field in his career at Augusta. He won this tournament 7 years ago. And he's posted good scores before, been at the top of the leaderboard or near the top of the leaderboard, made the cut multiple times. Nikolai Hogard is a guy that I'm just kind of intrigued by. He's got the driver to really punish Augusta National. There are only a handful of golfers in the world Cam Young, Rory McIlroy, who, rank ahead of Hogard in terms of like driving distance relative to the field at this event since the start of last
and
year.
accuracy as well.
Yeah. So he's an interesting guy for me. I think I'm almost kind of between those two. Let me look at this list just to make sure there's not another name that jumps out to me. I mean, Justin Rose, I can't really speak to what he's been doing lately, to be honest with you. So for that reason, part of me wants to take Sergio just because I don't know, he's been in good form with Liv and he's done this multiple times before. He feels like a guy that could make the cut at the very least. But another part of me wants to go with Hogard. I'll just go Sergio. Fuck it.
Yeah, I think that's the right pick. I think his iron play has come back into form. He's been putting the ball well as well. So we'll see how it works out. But now it's time for our wild card picks. We just head back up to the top and we can pick any player that hasn't been picked yet.
Okay, but real fast before we do that, to wrap up the show. So for me, I've got Xander Schauffele, Will Zalatoris, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, and Sergio. You got, who was it? Scotty Scheffler, Bryson DeChambeau. Who was your tier 3 guy? It was
Tier
Tommy
3
Fleetwood.
guy was Tommy
It was-
Fleetwood, right?
Yep, it was Tommy Fleetwood. And then your tier 4 guy was
Andy McCarthy.
Denny McCarthy. And then you
Harris
picked Harris English. Okay. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure I'm caught up on this because I'm going to literally copy and paste this onto our Twitter feed later. For my wild card pick, obviously I'm going to go with a guy from tier 1 or tier 2. Because I feel like, well, we'll get into that here in a little bit. For my wild card pick, let's see. You know what? I'm going to go Hideki Matsuyama, who's 12th in the world. He's 22-1. He won this event 3 years ago, 2021. Amongst players with at least 20 rounds played since the beginning of January 15 at Augusta National. He ranks 5th in strokes gained just behind Rory McIlroy, Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth, and Jon Rahm. So he's in that kind of elite company. 3 of those other guys have won this event before. And he's been incredible so far this year. Like there's really no way around that. And he's not missed a cut at the Masters since 2014. So his track record speaks for itself. He has a win here. He's playing really good golf. And that will be my wild card pick.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I think he's consistently been getting top tens here this year. He's been quietly having a fantastic season so far. So really good pick. For me, I think I might go a little bit more chalky for my pick, like maybe one of the top 3 or 4 guys. I'm thinking between Rory and I'm also kind of considering Joaquin Niemann as well because he's been on an absolute tear this year. I don't know about his form here in the last few weeks, but earlier on, I think February and maybe early March, he was winning just about everything he entered, including I think he played some Asian Tour events to get his world ranking up, and then he did so much that the Masters had to send out an invitation to him. I don't think I'm going to go with him though. I think I'm going to go with Rory just because I want to root for him anyway. So I might as well just take him and make my rooting interest a little bit stronger.
That is, I mean, the storyline every year. And once again this year, and we haven't really mentioned it yet, but he's going for the career Grand Slam. I don't know what number chance this is, but we're here again. And so
It's been 10 years of trying to go for the Grand Slam, I believe. I think
yeah.
2014 he won the British Open. So 2015 onward, he's been trying to get the Grand Slam at Augusta.
Yeah, and he's really kind of tried everything that you can. He's played less tournaments coming in. He's tried extra practice at Augusta, less practice at Augusta. This year, he's tried to play more golf coming into Augusta. So we'll see, what works and what, he's kind of tried everything at this point, but he's definitely got a good shot, and you've got the two favorites basically. So you've got, you got to feel good about that. Funny how that worked out. John Rahm. So let's see. Strokes gain numbers for players in this field over the last 10 years at Augusta. As I mentioned, Rory's fourth, just behind John Rahm, Jordan Spieth, Scotty Scheffler. So he's got a good opportunity. And last quick note on Hideki, my wild card pick. Not only has he not missed a cut at Augusta since 2014, he's not finished outside the top 32 at Augusta since 2014. Every single year since 2014, he's been inside the top 32. So there's that. Anything else that you want to mention before we wrap this thing up?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how this weather affects things. You mentioned the inclement weather coming in the morning. The thing about that is in the first two rounds, an underrated part of winning at Augusta is you kind of got to get lucky with how the weather shakes out in the first two rounds, because sometimes you can get the easier conditions in the morning wave and an afternoon wave on Friday, and sometimes vice versa. And I think tomorrow, the afternoon wave guys will get the better end of the stick, I think.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. And it'll be nice, just having the Masters on at work while I'm doing other stuff.
Yeah.
But before we kind of wrap this thing up, I wanted to look at some of the featured groups that we'll be seeing over the first 2 days, Thursday and Friday. So tomorrow we've got, it looks like we've got Wyndham Clark, Victor Hovland, and Cameron Smith going off at about 10:54 a.m. I don't know if those are Eastern time. I have to double check that, but that's a very interesting trio. Tiger's going to go off in the afternoon with Jason Day and Max Homa. Also in the afternoon, you'll get Dustin Johnson, Colin Morikawa, and Tommy Fleetwood shortly after Tiger goes off. Here's a full list. So in the morning, I'll get to see Sergio, who's going off pretty early. 8:12 a.m. As long as those tee times don't get pushed back. I'll get to see Corey Connors, who's also part of my picks, going off. Russell Henley is later on in the morning. Hideki's in the morning. A lot of my guys are in the morning tomorrow. As far as you are concerned, you've got Scotty Scheffler and Rory. Is that right? Scotty Scheffler, Rory, and Xander Schauffele are playing all together? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That'll be at 9:42 Central Time. That they will go off as long as those times don't get pushed back. That's the group I'll be watching probably a lot. And yeah, I mean, I just thought it'd be interesting to look at some of these trios because I haven't looked at the pairings yet. But any other thoughts on what you're looking for day 1, day 2 at Augusta? Any other players we didn't talk about that stand out in your mind as players that could, contend? I know I just asked you like 40 questions at once, but take that where you go.
You're good. You're good. I think a player that stands out. Well, a lot of people that I've talked to have been really high on Brooks going into this week.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm in that camp, but I mean, he has a track record at majors to where, I mean, even if he's not, in his absolute best form coming in, I think he's got as good a shot as anybody for sure. I think an intriguing storyline is definitely, obviously the big one is Tiger. Whether he gets through the full week, I think if he gets through this entire week, I think that will bode well for the rest of the season because Augusta is one of the toughest walks on the entire season. So if he can get through that, then
it'll be a good sign. It'll be a good sign after, and I know that he got sick, right? I mean, he got the flu. He needed an IV at where was that again? It was
the Genesis.
The Genesis. So that was kind of like a
fluky one. Yeah, it wasn't because of his leg.
But I'm interested to see like later on in rounds how he said that he experiences pain every day, or he aches kind of every day, but it's just kind of managing that will be the key in getting through it. Obviously, we know he's got as high of a pain tolerance and mental ability to kind of just zero in and focus and perform at a level you don't think he can because he's the GOAT, in my opinion. But he'll have to kind of manage that as Augusta is pretty damn demanding in terms of the walk, as you said. So, I mean, it'll be a great week. I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. Begins in about 7-ish hours, as long as the weather doesn't really mess with that. And I'm sure we'll be back soon with another golf episode. Maybe we'll even recap the Masters. Who knows? We never really talked about doing any other golf episodes outside of just majors and Ryder Cup stuff. But maybe we'll consider it this year. Let us know what you think. Let us know your feedback, and we'll definitely take that into consideration. But that's going to do it for us here Wednesday, April 10th, 11:15 p.m. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please share this with your friends, like and subscribe. And just like the wait for the first major of the year, the Masters 2024, we are going. Peace.
Peace out.